guys, it's Miss Delaney again, and today we will be reading Frog and Toad and working on some of our vowel sounds like A, E, I, O, and Oo. And after we're done reading, we have a little worksheet where we're going to practice using some of our vowel sounds. Alrighty. So for this video lesson, we're just going to read the first two chapters of Frog and Toad. And then our next lesson, we're going to review the last part of this book, and we're going to do something a little bit more tough with vowel sounds. So today's going to be an introduction to vowel sounds, and then our next lesson is going to be a little bit harder, but I think you guys will do great. Chapter 1, A List. One morning, Toad sat in bed. "I have many things to do," he said. "I will write them all down on a list so that I can remember them." Toad wrote on a piece of paper, "A list of things to do today." Then he wrote, "Wake up." "I have done that," said Toad, and he crossed out "wake up." Then Toad wrote other things on the paper. "There," said Toad, "now my day is all written down." He got out of bed and had something to eat. Then Toad crossed out "eat breakfast." Toad took his clothes out of the closet and put them on. Then he crossed out "get dressed." Toad put the list in his pocket. He opened the door and walked out into the morning. Soon Toad was at Frog's front door. He took the list out of his pocket and crossed out "go to Frog's house." Toad knocked at the door. "Hello," said Frog. "Look at my list of things to do," said Toad. "Oh," said Frog, "that is very nice." Toad said, "My list tells me that we will go for a walk." "All right," said Frog, "I am ready." Frog and Toad went on a walk. Then Toad took the list from his pocket again. He crossed out, "take walk with Frog." Just then there was a strong wind. It blew the list out of Toad's hand. The list blew high up into the air. "Help!" cried Toad. "My list is blowing away. What will I do without my list?" "Hurry," said Frog, "we will run and catch it." "No," shouted Toad. "I cannot do that." "Why not?" asked Frog. "Because," wailed Toad, "running after my list is not one of the things that I wrote on my list of things to do." Frog ran after the list. He ran over the hills and swamps, but the list blew on and on. At last Frog came back to Toad. "I am sorry," gasped Frog, "but I could not catch your list." "Blah," said Toad. "I cannot remember any of the things that were on my list of things to do. I will just have to sit here and do nothing," said Toad. Toad sat and did nothing. Frog sat with him. After a long time, Frog said, "Toad, it is getting dark. We should be going to sleep now." "Go to sleep?" shouted Toad. "That was the last thing on my list." Toad wrote on the ground with a stick, "go to sleep." Then he crossed out, "go to sleep." "There," said Toad, "now my day is all crossed out." "I am glad," said Frog. Then Frog and Toad went right to sleep. Chapter 2, The Garden. Frog was in his garden. Toad came walking by. "What a fine garden you have, Frog," he said. "Yes," said Frog, "it is very nice, but it was hard work." "I wish I had a garden," said Toad. "Here are some flower seeds. Plant them in the garden," said Frog. "And soon you will have a garden." "How soon?" asked Toad. "Quite soon," said Frog. Toad ran home. He planted the flower seeds. "Now, seeds," said Toad, "start growing." Toad walked up and down a few times. The seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head close to the ground and said loudly, "Now, seeds, start growing." Toad looked at the ground again. The seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head very close to the ground and shouted, "Now, seeds, start growing." Frog came running up the path. "What is all this noise?" he asked. "My seeds will not grow," said Toad. "You are shouting too much," said Frog. "These poor seeds are afraid to grow." "My seeds are afraid to grow?" asked Toad. "Of course," said Frog. "Leave them alone for a few days. Let the sun shine on them. Let the rain fall on them. Soon your seeds will start to grow. That night, Toad looked out his window. "Drat," said Toad. "My seeds have not started to grow. They must be afraid of the dark." Toad went out in his garden with some candles. "I will read the seeds a story," said Toad. "Then they will not be afraid." Toad read a long story to his seeds. All the next day, Toad sang songs to his seeds. And all the next day, Toad read poems to his seeds. And all the next day, Toad played music for his seeds. Toad looked at the ground. The seeds still did not start to grow. "What shall I do?" cried Toad. "These must be the most frightened seeds in the whole world." Then Toad felt very tired, and he fell asleep. "Toad, Toad, wake up," said Frog. "Look at your garden." Toad looked at his garden. Little green plants were coming up out of the ground. "At last," shouted Toad, "my seeds have stopped being afraid to grow. And now you will have a nice garden too," said Frog. "Yes," said Toad, "but you were right, Frog. It was very hard work." Alrighty guys, so now that we are done reading, I want you to take a look at this Frog and Toad vocabulary that we're going to work on. First, we're going to focus on the left side of this table. I want you to look at our missing vowel sounds. We have O, our long O sound, E, which is two E's, and oo, which is two O's. So we're going to go through these words together and fill in each one on the missing vowel sound that needs put in there. All right, so our first word, Frog wrote a book. Frog wrote a list. What vowel sound goes in there? Right, that long O sound. Alrighty, our next word starts with S, ends with N. What missing vowel goes in there? Right, soon. Now we have Z. What do you put on in the morning? Right, clothes. Then we have D. Frog put what in the ground? Right, he put seeds. Next up we have hell. What sound goes there? Hello. Frog said hello to Toad. Next up we have gr. What happens to plants? Right, they grow. Long O. Frog and Toad go where? They go home. Long O. Alrighty, our next word, gr. What vowel sound goes in there? What's the color of plants? Right, green. E. And our last word on the left side is what happens to a door? Right, you open it. Long O. Good job. Alrighty, so now I want you to look at the right side that we have here. We have 3 new vowel patterns we're going to identify that we used when we read Frog and Toad. First is OA, and that makes a long O sound too, kind of like O. Then we have OU, which makes an ow sound, and AI, which makes an A sound. Alrighty, so we're going to read through our words and try to identify them. First off, we have one of the most common words in our book. T, D. What would you put in there? Right, toad, O-A. Next we have, what were Frog and Toad? They were afraid, A-I, of the scary things in the mountain. Next we have T. What happens when you yell? Right, you shout. Our next word starts with a W, W, and ends with an L, L. What sound goes in there? Wail, like wail and scream and cry. Good job. Our next word starts with and ends with T. What does it mean when you can't have something? Yeah, you go with out, O-U, out. Our next word starts with gr and ends with nd. Where do we put seeds? Where do Frog and Toad plant seeds? Right, the ground, O-U. And our last word starts with r, R, and ends with N. What falls from the sky that's wet? Right, rain. A-I, rain. You guys did such an awesome job following along, and I'm really glad we could cover some of our vowel sounds and identify them with words using frog and toad. Thank you, guys.